There comes a moment in every believer's life when the weight of the world feels unbearable, when prayers seem unanswered, when silence feels louder than words, and when your heart whispers, God, are you even listening? If you've ever been there, you're not alone. Every person of faith, from Abraham to David, from Paul to Peter, has faced that breaking point where faith is tested not by the storm outside, but by the silence within. And it's in that very silence that the most powerful truth reveals itself. God's presence is not proven by what you see, it's proven by what you believe when you see nothing at all. You see, real faith isn't about feeling strong, it's about trusting God even when you feel like you're falling apart. It's easy to say God is good when the bills are paid, the health reports are clear, and the path ahead is smooth. But when the storm hits, when your plans collapse, your prayers seem unanswered, and your faith feels fragile, that's when your belief becomes real. Because it's in the waiting, the weeping, and the wondering that God begins to build something far deeper than blessings. He builds trust. When everything feels uncertain, that's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter where God is teaching you to depend not on your strength, but on His. Think about it. When Peter stepped out on the water, he didn't walk because the sea was calm. He walked because his eyes were fixed on Jesus. The moment he looked at the waves, he began to sink. And the same truth applies to you. The moment you focus on your problems instead of God's promises, fear takes over. But the moment you lift your eyes back to Him, even the storm becomes a platform for His glory. You might not realize it now, but the pain you're feeling is not proof that God has abandoned you. It's proof that He's preparing you. Because every trial that makes you question your faith is the same trial that deepens it. Every unanswered prayer is an invitation to trust that God's plan is still unfolding behind the scenes. Faith is not about controlling outcomes. It's about surrendering outcomes to the one who already knows the ending. Maybe right now you're praying for healing, for a breakthrough, for a sign, and heaven feels silent. You're asking God, where are you? But what if He's closer than you think? What if the silence isn't absence, but preparation? You see, God doesn't rush His work. He takes His time because what He's building in you is eternal. We live in a world of instant results, instant answers, instant gratification, but faith doesn't grow instantly. It grows in the waiting. It matures in the unseen. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, when David was running from Saul, when Jesus was nailed to the cross, all seemed lost. But in those very moments, God was writing redemption into the story. And the same God who turned their pain into purpose is still writing your story. The waiting season is not wasted. It's where roots of faith go deeper than fear ever could. You're not being forgotten, you're being formed. Here's the truth. God never promised that the path would be easy, but He did promise that you would never walk it alone. He said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. That means in the hospital room, He's there. In the sleepless nights, He's there. In the quiet tears no one sees, He's still there. And maybe the reason He hasn't answered the way you expected is because He's answering in a way that will change you, not just your situation. Sometimes God calms the storm, but other times He lets the storm rage while He calms your heart. Faith doesn't always move mountains immediately. Sometimes it teaches you to climb them one step at a time with peace in your soul. And that's where spiritual strength is born, not in avoiding hardship, but in discovering God's presence inside it. Think of it like this. If life were always smooth, you'd never learn what it means to rely on grace. If prayers were answered the moment you asked, you'd never understand patience. If blessings came without battle, you'd never know the beauty of victory. God allows certain delays, disappointments, and detours. because they're all divine tools shaping your destiny. Every no you face is redirecting you toward a better yes. Every door that closes is protecting you from something you can't yet see. Faith means trusting that even when you don't understand the route, the driver knows exactly where he's taking you. And sometimes the detour is the miracle in disguise. When Jesus told his disciples to cross to the other side, a storm rose on the sea. The waves were violent, the boat was shaking, and fear filled their hearts. They thought they were going to die. But what they didn't realize was that Jesus was in the boat the entire time. The storm wasn't sent to destroy them. It was sent to show them who he really was. And that's what's happening in your life right now. The struggle you're facing isn't meant to break you. It's meant to reveal God's strength in you. You may feel weak, but God's power is made perfect in weakness. You may feel empty, but that's where his grace overflows. You may feel lost, but that's exactly where his guidance shines brightest. The darkness you're walking through isn't the end, it's the tunnel that leads to the light. The most powerful truth that strengthens faith is this: God's faithfulness doesn't depend on your circumstances, it depends on his character. Circumstances change, feelings change, people change, but God never changes. His love is constant. His promises stand. His word never fails. When he said, I am with you, he didn't mean only when life is easy. He meant through every valley, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer, and every lonely night. Faith becomes powerful when you stop asking, why me? And start declaring, even now, I will trust you. Because that's where true power lies, not in understanding every detail, but in choosing to believe, even when everything around you screams doubt. So today, take a deep breath. You're not losing, you're learning. You're not forgotten, you're being refined. The delay is not denial. The silence is not punishment, it's preparation. God is still in control, and he's working things out in ways you can't yet see. Your story is still unfolding, and one day you'll look back and realize that every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every painful night, it all led you right where you needed to be. God didn't fail you, he was forming your faith. So hold on, don't give up. Keep praying even when it's hard. Keep believing even when it hurts. Because the same God who parted the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who walked through fire with his children, is the same God who stands beside you right now. You are not weak for feeling weary. You are human. But you serve a God who is divine, and his strength is made perfect in your weakness. When you can't see the way, remember that he is the way. When you can't find peace, remember that he is your peace. When you don't know what's next, remember that he already does. Faith isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about knowing that even when it's not, God is still good. So lift your head, wipe your tears. The same hands that shaped the universe are holding your future. The same voice that spoke light into darkness is whispering over your soul, do not be afraid, for I am with you. And when you start to believe that, not just with your mind, but with your heart, your faith will no longer be fragile. It will be unshakable. Because the most powerful truth of all is this: God has never failed and he never will. There comes a time in your walk with God when faith stops being just a word you speak and becomes the air you breathe. It's not about quoting verses anymore. It's about living them when everything in you wants to quit. It's about waking up to another hard day and still whispering, God, I trust you. You see, faith doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means the presence of purpose within pain. Every tear you've cried has been counted, every prayer you've prayed has been heard, and every silent ache in your heart has been seen by the one who loves you beyond measure. That's the truth that strengthens faith. Not that life will be easy, but that God is faithful through it all. When everything seems to fall apart, that's when God begins to reveal that He was never building your life on what you could control. He was building it on what could never be shaken: His presence, His word, and His promises. You might not realize it, but the breaking season is often the birthing season. What feels like an ending is sometimes the beginning of a miracle. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, trapped between water and Pharaoh's army, they thought it was over. But God didn't bring them that far to abandon them. He brought them there to show them His power. And just like that, the sea that seemed impossible to cross became the path that led them to freedom. Maybe that's what God is doing in your life right now, bringing you to a place where your strength ends so His can begin. Because if you could do it on your own, you'd never know what it means to fully rely on Him. Faith begins where human ability ends. It's in the I can't that God whispers, but I can. And sometimes it takes losing everything you thought you needed to realize God was all you ever needed. You may have lost people, opportunities, or dreams, but you didn't lose your destiny. What God has written for you cannot be erased by what people do to you. The pain may delay your progress, but it cannot destroy your purpose. Remember Joseph? He was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and forgotten in prison. For years, it seemed like God was silent. But when the time was right, God elevated him from the prison to the palace in a single moment. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was preparing him for the weight of what was coming. And that's what God is doing with you. You're being prepared for something greater than what you lost. You're being refined for something beyond what you can see. Faith that is never tested can never be trusted. It's the fire that proves the gold. You're not being punished, you're being purified. The fire you're walking through is not to destroy you, but to burn away everything that isn't meant for your next chapter. You might feel like you're in the middle of chaos, but remember, creation began in chaos. The earth was formless and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, but then God spoke. One word from Him turned chaos into order, darkness into light, and emptiness into beauty. That same voice is still speaking over your life. So when everything feels uncertain, don't panic, pause, and remember who your God is. He doesn't need perfect conditions to perform a miracle. He can create something out of nothing. You see, the greatest moments of faith often happen in the darkest nights. When you can't see, you learn to hear. When you can't move, you learn to trust. When you can't understand, you learn to surrender. That's when faith stops being theory and becomes transformation. You stop asking God to change your situation and start asking Him to change your heart. You stop chasing answers and start resting in His presence. Because faith isn't about getting what you want, it's about growing into who God created you to be. And sometimes that growth comes through pain, through patience, through perseverance. It's not easy, but it's holy. Let's be honest, there are days when you don't feel strong. You pray, but nothing changes. You read scripture, but it feels dry. You try to worship, but your heart feels numb. And yet, that's the moment heaven leans in the closest. Because worship that comes from a place of pain is the purest kind of worship. When you say, God, I still trust you while your world is falling apart, that's the kind of faith that moves mountains. That's the kind of faith that touches heaven. And that's the kind of faith that changes everything inside of you. You may not see it, but God is working in ways that your eyes can't perceive. While you're crying at night, He's rewriting your story. While you're waiting in silence, He's setting the stage for your next season. When it looks like nothing's happening, everything's happening in the spiritual realm. Because faith isn't about what's visible, it's about what's eternal. The same God who hung stars in the sky and called them by name is the same God who calls you his own. And when he says, I've got you, that means no weapon formed against you will prosper. That means no storm will last forever. That means the valley you're walking through has an exit, and that exit leads to glory. The truth is, the devil doesn't attack what's weak, he attacks what's valuable. The reason you've been under pressure isn't because you're forgotten, it's because you're chosen. The enemy sees what God is about to do in your life, and he's terrified of it. But here's the promise. No matter how fierce the battle gets, victory already belongs to the Lord. So stop giving fear a voice in your mind. Stop replaying what went wrong. Stop doubting your worth. You are not a mistake. You are a miracle in progress. And if God brought you this far, he will finish what he started. Sometimes God removes what you thought you couldn't live without to show you that he is enough. Sometimes he closes doors not to hurt you, but to protect you. Sometimes he breaks your heart to rebuild it around his love. The pain you feel today is the strength you'll stand on tomorrow. You're being shaped for something sacred. And the sooner you stop fighting the process, the sooner peace will flood your soul. Because faith doesn't mean you understand everything. It means you trust the one who does. If you could see what's waiting on the other side of this trial, you'd thank God for not giving up on you. You'd realize that the storm was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to deliver you to your purpose. You'd see that the valley was just the path to the mountain. And one day, when you look back, you'll understand that every tear watered the seeds of your breakthrough. Every disappointment became direction. Every no was divine protection. So right now, lift your head and remind yourself, I'm still here. That means God isn't done. That means purpose is still alive. That means grace is still working. You might be walking through fire, but you're not burning because God is walking through it with you. He said in Isaiah 43:2, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned. That's not a poetic line, that's a promise. And the God who spoke it still keeps his word. So don't let fear define your faith. Let faith define your future. You are stronger than you think, not because of who you are, but because of who's inside you. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. That means resurrection power flows through your veins. That means no setback is permanent, no loss is final, no failure is fatal. The story isn't over, it's just shifting toward glory. And when it's all said and done, the only explanation for your comeback will be this: God did it. You're not surviving, you're being strengthened. You're not broken, you're being rebuilt. You're not forgotten, you're being favored. Hold on to this truth. God's delay is not his denial. His silence is not his absence. And his no is not rejection, it's redirection. One day, everything will make sense. But until that day comes, keep walking by faith, not by sight. Keep believing even when it hurts. Because faith doesn't always change your circumstances immediately, but it always changes you. And the version of you that's coming out of this storm will be stronger, wiser, and filled with a faith that no storm can shake.